It's 2020 and we're celebrating a new year, thinking of those resolutions for the year to come. However, on the other side of the world, the news isn't so great. There's a new outbreak of an unknown virus in China. In the city of Wuhan, those who are becoming ill seem to have a link to a local fish market. People are becoming seriously ill, and cases continue to rise and spread. The World Health Organization then announces that this is a new coronavirus. The news that no one wanted to hear, that the outbreak is a global pandemic. Testing ramps up around the world. Governments provide guidance to the best they can. Travel plans are halted. Despite these measures, more and more people become ill. We see our first case in the bubble of St. Andrews. Then,
we will beat the coronavirus, and we will beat it together. And therefore, I urge you, at this moment of national emergency, to stay at home, protect our NHS, and save lives. Thank you.
For everyone, you must stay at home unless it is absolutely essential to go out, and that includes working from home wherever possible. Life should not feel normal for you right now, so if it is, then you are not doing the right things, and I want to ask you today to please put that right.
I research as well as teach. So on the teaching front, of course, there's been this huge learning curve, which has been very time consuming as we've all transitioned to online teaching and then planned for dual delivery and rethought everything all over again. But I've also found it really illuminating and rewarding. I think I've thought a lot about the strengths and weaknesses of some of our more traditional teaching and assessment models, and that's forced me into some quite interesting experiments. And I think one of the other things that I've found is a sort of across my discipline and across other disciplines too, a really good sharing of expertise. So I felt like there's lots of support from colleagues around the world and a real coming together of ideas. And that, I think, helps with a sort of sense of potential for lots of positive change going forward. So on the teaching side, it's been time consuming and at times quite difficult, but also really positive. On the research side, because I have 3 young children and schools closed, I faced enormous time pressures, and really on the research side, I just had to press pause. And I found that really difficult, partly because some of the research I'm involved with involves other people. So, for example, I'm trying to complete an edited volume which has got contributions from 15 other people, so I owe it to them to get that out. But there's also that sense of your research career going on hold and you losing the momentum that you had. And I would say that research-wise, I've been set back very much more than the 6 months of the pandemic, partly because this current academic year obviously involves a higher workload in terms of administration and teaching. So on the research side, yes, I feel some frustration and actually some concern about the future. Right now, I'm saying no to all new invitations to give conference papers and so on, just to try and help me catch up. But I know that's not good in the long run. In the scheme of things, it's a relatively minor problem, but I do have some concerns about the sort of the longer term impact on my research career as a result, not just of these 6 months, but the next 12 months and following. Absolutely, the most difficult thing was the lack of time. I've got 3 young children. They got sent home from school in March, and it wasn't just that I had to do childcare, but obviously had to take on homeschooling, and that took an average of about 5 hours a day. And on top of that, there was the sense of, trying to look after these children through a really scary experience. So a lot of time spent trying to just be with them and reassure them and make sure they were exercised and so on. On the plus side, that whole experience gave me some new insights into school level education, which I think might eventually factor into some of my university level teaching. But certainly juggling the school schedules and the homework for them and just the wraparound childcare was really a full-time job in itself. And I think for all the other working parents that are out there, I really do want to be clear that the impact of that on people's research productivity and other areas of their work for the next few years is going to be huge. And I know plenty of dads were affected as well as mums. So it's not just a problem for the female workforce, although there is evidence coming out that it did perhaps affect women slightly more than men. So I do think that in the coming months and years that working parents in particular are going to need some support. And I really welcome the Restart research funding, which will hopefully help a bit, but it would be good to find other ways to support working parents in the aftermath of COVID as a result of all this homeschooling and so on that we've had to do. Well, I think the pandemic crisis really did help me to focus my mind on what my priorities are. So family first, absolutely. But then within work, I ended up really being able to identify that my two priority areas, if I could only do two things, were thinking about teaching innovations, not just routine teaching, but actually innovating with my teaching, and then doing more socially impactful research. And so I think one positive is that sort of need to prioritize that really ruthlessly helps you see the wood for the trees. Another positive, I think, was finding new ways to connect with other academic colleagues around the world, and ways that I found particularly accessible actually for working parents. So over the last few months, I've been involved in quite a few different types of online debate, workshop, conference, and I've attended some and I've helped to design others, including things at the Edinburgh Fringe and things with the Young Academy of Scotland, academic conferences that are sort of split over multiple afternoons rather than being one whole day, or using pre-recorded provocations to sort of tee up discussion. And I found that really fantastic, that chance to experiment with all these formats. I think it's really inclusive. I think you can get a really much greater diversity of participants, so people from all sorts of backgrounds, not just the people who are in the kind of job in a well-endowed university that can pay for travel funding, for example. But I've been at conferences where there have been school teachers who wouldn't normally be able to get away from the classroom for long enough, or who wouldn't get funding. And of course, they're environmentally friendly as well. And I think there will always be a place for face-to-face meetings, and I'm a bit clearer in my head about what exactly we get out of that face-to-face now. But I really do hope that going forward, we're going to be able to do more online conferencing and in ways that really will help us include a much greater diversity of voices and viewpoints in our research and in our debates around teaching practice and so on. Well, I've mentioned the fact that I'd love there to be more online conferences and more experiments with the format of conferences and so on. Other things that I'd like to continue doing, I'd like to continue having a daily walk. I think we were all at risk of burnout before the pandemic struck, and that's all the more true now that we've been for months taking on an extra workload. So building a sort of a daily constitutional into my my working day, I think, is really important as we go through the winter and this current academic year. I do think that the pandemic has really given us opportunities to reflect and innovate within higher education generally. And I think one thing that's really crucial is that we involve practitioners, so the people really at the coalface of delivering higher education in those reflections. And in fact, the Young Academy of Scotland is right now driving forward a project with the Royal Society of Edinburgh, and part of our role is to involve practitioners, academics, lecturers in the conversation. So it's not just university management, government policy makers and so on who are making all the decisions about the future of higher education. I think connected with that as well, we've got an opportunity to perhaps help shift some public attitudes to research and expertise, and the media narrative around the value of universities and the value of higher education in the UK. There is quite a lot of university bashing in the media, and then also lots of talk by politicians about the economic value of universities, or the sort of the graduate earnings set up as a really crude measure of our sort of return on investment. And I think it would be really fantastic now that we're seeing experts on our screens every day, and people are delving into statistics as well as science and the ethics of medical prioritization and so on, for us all to help change the story a little bit, and capitalize a bit on the wider public understanding of the value of different kinds of expertise, humanities as well as science. The value that universities and research have for society. I think I'd have two pieces of advice. I think my first one would be hold your nerve and trust yourself. So I imagine I'm not alone in having had quite a lot of panicky moments and moments of feeling really overwhelmed. But actually looking back on the last 6 months, we've all been really quite creative. We've all been really flexible. We've all sort of dug deep. And I think that that means that we should all take some real strength from that, and know that no matter what is thrown at us next, if we hold our nerve, we will get through it. And then the other piece of advice I would give myself is just be kind to yourself. Cut yourself some slack. I think perhaps especially if you're a working parent and trying to juggle everything else as well as your job, you're not superhuman. Everyone needs time to recharge, and above all, everyone needs time to sleep, as well as get out on their daily walk. So yeah, hold your nerve and be kind to yourself.